Good morning and welcome back, everybody, here to day 2 at the 2018 Charlotte Pokemon Regional Championships. What an exciting day we had. I'm here with Zach Elliott and myself, Michael Canaves. How do you feel about today starting out, Zach?
Today we've got another set of 6 Swiss rounds. We're going to go into top 8. We've cut to 34 of the top players that were able to achieve 21 match points today. And we've already pulled a match, and players are setting up. So we're going to talk a little bit about who we've pulled, the matchup that we have here, before we get right into the game.
Right. We've actually got 2 players. One of them you actually saw yesterday, also in the first round to kick things off. We've got Kyle Sabelhaus with the infamous Gardevoir GX Zoroark GX deck that came out of the Oceania Regional International Championships from Tord Reclove. And then, of course, on the other side, we have something a little bit less conventional. Chip Richey has brought a Zoroark GX counter energy toolbox to the table.
Yeah, this deck he's playing a couple counter energies, 2 rainbow energies, and then just a slew of all these different type attackers, like you were saying earlier. Mimikyu, Sudowoodo, and the Shaman, for example. He's got a Kartana GX in there that serves double duty. You know, you can remove special energies with that slice off ability, attach a rainbow energy to it, and hey, Blade GX is pretty good. You're not really playing any other GX attacks that you will normally be using, so it's a great option to have available to him. And he's going to be trying to maneuver the matchup in such a way that he'll be hitting Kyle for weakness pretty much the whole game.
Right. So the ones that we want to talk about that are most important there, besides the Kartana, are actually the Cobalion and the Sudowoodo that he's playing. Cobalion is a metal Pokemon that does 30 plus 30 more for each prize card they've taken. So once Kyle has taken 2 prize cards, if that Cobalion has a choice band, it can one-hit KO a Gardevoir GX.
Right, yeah, that choice band gets it to 120, hit for weakness, 240 damage, more than enough to clear a big Gardevoir GX. So that Gardevoir it can't go unanswered in this matchup. At any point, Chip can just say, you know what, I've got Rescue Stretcher, or just the Cobalion naturally in hand, drop that and counter energy, and you can clear off a Gardevoir with 5-6 energies on it, which a lot of other decks sometimes just don't have an answer to that.
Absolutely.
So having those 2 counter energies available, very critical. Sudowoodo, watch and learn. We've talked about this day 1. With a counter energy, copies the right is beating attack, and you get your one-shot knockout that way. And of course, you're playing Zoroarks, so you can just trade, draw into those energies, draw into those tech attackers that you need in order to answer whatever offense that Kyle is putting on.
Yeah, Sudowoodo you can even use, you can copy Infinite Force from Gardevoir, so I mean, if you set that up, you can even make some big knockouts there.
That's right, counter energy counts for 2 energies already, so you don't need too many more on the Gardevoir before you're doing some big damage.
Right. So with that, though, we're actually going to see if we can cut into the game. I know both players are set up here, so we're going to try to see some of the action live here because, again, this is just going to be a bit of a different dynamic from the matchups that we saw yesterday in these Zoroark decks. We're going to see, like you said, Chip's going to be trying to play a little bit more conservative to use those counter energies to be able to have those responses when he needs, and that's going to put Kyle in an interesting situation as well. But to go into the game right off the bat, Kyle not looking at the best start with a Tapu Lele GX, playing an Ultra Ball, immediately discarding both a Max Potion and a Choice Band. 2 resources that are fairly useful, especially that Max Potion coming into this matchup, and having to be put down a second Tapu Lele already to be able to get that first turn Bridget.
Right, yeah, these later on, not going to have too many outs to the Tapu Lele GX to fish him out of late game situations when you might need to draw a card, or particularly, use the Tapu Lele to search out Mallow and find the cards that he needs and trade into them. Not necessarily going to be an option for Kyle this game. We'll have to see how that ends up playing out here as that Bridget goes and grabs 2 Zora, one of the routes. This is usually what this deck does. You want to have more Zoras than routes in the early game because you use the trade to set up your big card.
Exactly. And you even mentioned that Mallow, and that's going to be one of Chip's best friend as well. He plays, I believe it's 2 copies of Mallow, and of course the full suite of Puzzle of Time. So as we saw time and time again yesterday with the Zoroark GX, because of the trade ability, as we were saying, the Zoroark trading card game, you get to be able to pull off these combinations with counter energy and your attacker very, very easily. You get to use your discard as a toolbox with Puzzle, or your deck with the card in the form of Mallow. Yep,
so Kyle's turn is just going to be that Ultra Ball for Lele into Bridget, and he is going to pass it over to Chip. Chip opens with the Bridget in his hand himself. Gonna go get a set of Zorua and also pulls Tapu Koko to the front, looking to maybe make some flying flips happen here early in the game.
Yeah, I really like the Tapu Koko play because being able to, as I said, you kind of want to make sure that outside of setting up your trade and everything for that mid to late game, you also don't really want to take these early knockouts. You don't want to put early pressure. You don't really even mind that Ralt's becoming a Gardevoir. You don't really need to go after it with a Guzma like you've seen in some of the other decks. So Tapu Koko is one of those cards that says, well, I'm just going to use Flying Flip. I'm not actually going to take these knockouts. I'm going to soften up your board to try to set up bigger plays later. When there's damage on multiple Pokemon, you can't abuse something like Max Potion because everything's got damage.
Yeah, and ultimately you're just trying to set up these turns where you can drop the counter energy, take a big knockout. And if you're ahead on prizes, not going to happen. Counter energy only active when you are behind on prizes. So Chip's going to decide 1 Zorua, 2 Zorua, potentially 3 Zorua here. Going to go between that Zorua and the Tapu Koko. Hasn't fully committed to one or the other yet. And we see the Mimikyu in the active spot. Mimikyu's copycat attack, very good for combating Buzzwole. You can copy the Knuckle Impact, and that's just going to be for 1 counter energy. You get a knockout there. So you can see Chip's deck really just tech to combat really everything in the metagame. Mimikyu, though, not particularly relevant here, and unfortunate that he has started it, but...
Well, it might actually be relevant because Kyle does have that Gallade as well, so Mimikyu can copy Sensitive Blade to be able to take that out, because that was going to be one of Kyle's best options with Chip if he's trying to use just his Zoroark GXs. So if Kyle tries to return it with a Gallade, Chip can say, okay, well, my turn, come up, use the Copycat, and be able to follow Kyle's suit as well. And what's actually kind of interesting is you'd say, oh man, Mimikyu, probably not your best opener, but its first attack for just a colorless energy allows you to draw 2 cards. We see Chip just passing instead of having energy to use it, but if you're able to get 2 extra cards there with an energy that you didn't need anyways, it's a pretty useful situation.
Yeah, that's true. I suppose also it's fine to attach a counter energy and copy an infinite force against a big Gardevoir, just like the Sudowoodo can do, like we had mentioned. So I suppose it's actually not necessarily the worst, as after grabbing the 3rd Zorua with the Bridget, we go over to Kyle's side. He's got the Zoroark GX and then goes straight for the Rare Candy Gallade. So no Gardevoir GX, and is going to activate the Premonition ability off of the Gallade to rearrange those top 5 cards and decide which of these 5 he wants to trade into.
Yeah, this is actually like what the Gardevoir Zoroark player wants to see. This is like almost the ideal scenario for him on turn 2. Get a Zoroark GX in play, get a Rare Candy Gallade in play. He did already use that first trade ability, so he's not going to be able to trade into these this turn. But he is going to be able to at least know, that's just, he's got a second one, so he's already ready to go.
Yeah, trades that second Rare Candy. Doesn't need it right now. There's no other routes. Gets the Floatstone and the Cynthia down. Going to get a fresh set of 6 cards, and is going to be able to retreat this Tapu Lele. If he draws a double colorless energy, he can take the first prize. Of course, this will go ahead and activate Chip's counter energies, but you have to take prizes at some point as Kyle. You can't just never take prizes because you fear the counter energy.
And I kind of like this from Kyle's side, being able to take this knockout here if he's able. Chip decided not to get that Tapu Koko last turn, which what that signals is that if Chip wants to return a knockout on the Zoroark or the Gallade with the counter energy attacker next turn, he's also going to need to pull off some sort of Floatstone combination or something like that because he doesn't have that free retreater on the bench to be able to next turn just put down the Mimikyu again or put down the Sudowoodo and watch and learn. He can't just really do that in this scenario. So this is almost that perfect time for Kyle to be able to go in and take this first knockout and start his lead.
Yeah, and this Cynthia here gives Kyle, off of those 6 cards, a double colorless energy and gives him the first prize of the game. As we go over to Chip, I think he just top-decked Floatstone.
I'm not 100% sure, but if he's able to pull that off, it's going to be a great scenario. Even so, if he can get the counter Pokemon and he's got a lot of different options that he can be able to pull off. He doesn't need to necessarily knock out this Zoroark GX. He can take out one of the ones, the other one on the bench. Sure, that one doesn't have an energy, but if that's my option, I'm kind of okay with that as well.
Yeah, right. So Chip going to go with the Ultra Ball here. Does discard the Cobalion. It's not necessarily saying, hey, I'm not going to use Cobalion at all this game. He plays a Rescue Stretcher and the 4 Puzzle of Time. He can get that out when he needs it. But right now, there's no Gardevoir on the board that's really threatening him at all. So Cobalion not necessarily as important as starting to pull up some Zoroark GXs so that Chip can start trading and finding those counter energy attackers. Let's see if that Gallade really does come into play, because while Premonition is a good ability, that Sensitive Blade attack for a double colorless, if he's played a supporter, that just takes a one-shot on these Zoroarks that Chip is going to start developing on the board and might really kind of propel Kyle into an aggressive situation.
Now Chip does get those arc here though, so he's going to be able to actually start his trading card game. And I do believe I see a Mallow in his hand and a second Zoroark GX. Wow. So that's actually a pretty strong start and everything there for him. He opts to go with the Cynthia instead of the Mallow. So I don't really think that the Mallow would have gotten him enough cards to be able to pull off the combination of everything he needs. So that second trade would have kind of been something he was just hoping for. So I do like going into just a fresh new 6, plus of course the 2 trades that are going to come right afterwards. So he gets to go into the top 10 cards of his deck, look for that float zone combination, and he doesn't need it here. If he just gets a double colorless energy to be able to return to Riot of Speeding, it's not the end of the world. But if he does that, he is going to be in danger of that Glade coming up and using Sensitive Blade to start the Zoroark knockouts as well.
Yeah, Chip going to draw the 6 here off of the Mallow. That is a float stone. And Field Blower.
And a counter energy.
So he just needs the Sudowoodo if he wants to go for the Watch and Learn.
Yeah, he's one Pokemon, he's one card away from actually having the combination that he needs.
1, 2.
Double
trade.
Acerola, or no,
Second
I'm sorry,
trade.
Bridget, Puzzle Time, and an Evo Soda. So he can get another trade going.
And it might be what he ends up doing. Those Evo Sodas are just there to develop Zoroark GX onto the board. Another thing that we actually need to point out is Watch and Learn doesn't knock out the Zoroark GX just yet because Chip doesn't have enough Pokemon on his board for the Riot of Speeding to actually reach good damage numbers yet.
If he does put down the Sudowoodo, I know he has a Tapu Lele in his hand, so he'll have enough Pokemon to be able to actually pull it off. I think he only needs 5.
No, actually,
he needs all full 6 if he doesn't have a choice band. Yeah, you're correct. And I don't think he has. He would literally need to trade here into both the Sudowoodo and another basic Pokemon.
Yeah.
I think Chip realizing that, and that's why he goes to play this Tapu Lele for Wonder Tag here. He says, I'm perfectly fine playing it to thin my deck out for 1 card. He's actually just grabbing a Bridget because he's just like, well, I'm going to use a trade anyway, so might as well just dump this Bridget here for, get it out of the deck.
Yeah, he might be deciding he's going to dump it or maybe store it for next turn if he wants to search out some of the counter energy Pokemon, but we do see right now Sudowoodo is actually hiding in the prize cards.
So I don't really think that Chip's got a whole lot that he's going to be able to pull off here in terms of returning the knockout on the Zoroark specifically.
Yeah.
But he does find that DCE off that final trade. So Chip realizing that he doesn't want to just completely pass this situation back over to Kyle. So that's why he goes to just dig through that deck for that last Bridget to say, I need to thin my deck out. I'm going to want an extra Pokemon anyways to set up certain numbers and everything for the math. So this is, kind of the best situation that he can make out of the prize cards and everything that he's got.
Yeah, this is totally fine. It sets a Zoroark to 130 HP left with a choice band and another Pokemon. The Riot of Speeding will pick up that 2-shot. So without access to the Sudowoodo, this is pretty much Chip's best course of action here.
Right.
We kind of mentioned this yesterday about how players like to take their prizes in what order. That Sudowoodo is not in a favorable position for Chip. He's not going to draw that unless he draws his prizes in an unconventional way. Players tend to draw from the bottom up, and he's not going to see that Sudowoodo potentially for the entire game, which could really swing this game 1.
Now, I do see a Mallow over in Kyle's hand, so he's got to be contemplating things here with 1 trade ability left. I actually see puzzles in his hand. He's got a lot of different options here. He could go for something like the double colorless energy and a rare candy and actually have this explosive turn of rare candy, Gardevoir, use Secret Spring, and be able to knock out the Zoroark all at the same time. He could go for a Parallel City here to be able to put Chip in a rough scenario while taking out a knockout on that Zoroark. See, that's the incredible thing about these Zoroark decks when you're combining it with Mallow and Puzzle of Time, is that you have just so many options. It's like an endless world of possibilities in terms of the plays and the opportunities that you have to make it everything here. And I think that's why we've seen players favor these Zoroark decks so much outside of the consistency, but you really are at your mind's end to be able to, it's an endless possibility, so you can truly see one player trying to make, that's why we see something like Tord Rekla doing so well consistently, because he's able to consistently outplay and outwit his opponents by thinking a couple turns ahead and figuring out what the best course of action is each and every turn.
Yeah, and Kyle putting on his Tord Rekla hat here and saying, I'm going to Mallow for the exact cards that I need here. It's actually interesting to see that all of these players up to their Mallow counts. For the longest time, decks would just play 1 Mallow and said, you know what, I'll use it and I can Tapu Lele Wonder Type for it when I need it. But now most decks playing 2 copies of that Mallow, especially this Gardevoir deck that likes to use it to set up its rare candy plays and whatnot. We see that Kyle had when he played that Mallow, put the rare candy on top and then did trade into it like you were saying. So setting up for that Gardevoir to get that Secret Spring, and will also have the double colorless energy in his hand. So Sensitive Blade will be able to knock out this Zoroark GX that is in the active position for Chip.
And this is incredible. The things that Gallade and everything makes possible as well. The fact that after using the Mallow, after using his trade, once his turn's done, he says, all right, now I'm also going to look at the top 5 cards and set my next turn up. So Kyle now knows the next 5 cards that he's going to draw in terms of his double trade and his top deck for the following turn, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah, the Parallel City setting Chip down to just the 3 bench. Riotous Beating does not do a lot of damage when you cap it for Pokemon in play. I mean, it's only 80 damage, and Chip doesn't have a great solution to this Gallade at this point. He's going to need to get that Mimikyu back and potentially just use the Sensitive Blade. As he goes with the trade, discards a Rainbow Energy and gets some cards that are not really useful. The Field Blower is nice because he can remove the Parallel City and fill his bench back up, but Riotous Beating caps at 120 against that Gallade, and you really don't want to use Riotous Beating against a Gallade with a DCE.
I do see that he has the Rescue Stretcher in his hand, so he can get the Mimikyu, and he does the counter energy as well. So I think at this point, he's just looking for either a Float Stone or a way to get out of this active position to be able to secure the knockout on the Gallade.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we could possibly see, I'm not sure if he has a Guzma in his hand, but we could potentially see a Guzma play to be able to take something off the bench, but like that Zoroark GX and anything that already has 80 damage, because I don't know that this hand is going to be enough to actually take the knockout on the Gallade here like you would like.
Yeah, this is what I was just about to say. I think Chip is going to have to do is attach the double colorless energy and just go with the energy drive. Unfortunately, does not hit for weakness, so it only will do the 80 damage, but at least this Tapu Lele GX is not threatened to be immediately knocked out by the Gallade.
Yeah, but you've got to be in an incredibly uncomfortable position here as Chip Richey.
Yep.
You just said to Kyle that you said that has 3 prize cards remaining. You're leaving his Gallade up on the board with 2 Zoroark GXs on your bench, not even having a 3rd Zorua or anything just yet. Still not having that Tapu Koko on the bench to be able to set up that free retreater play and everything that you need. I could easily see Kyle. If he's looking for that Guzma to be able to pull up one of these Zoroarks, take another 2 prizes off this Gallade.
Right.
If you can sit here and say, my Gallade, one of them took 4 prize cards in this game, it's going to be really hard for Chip to combat that. Sure, he can start taking one-hit knockouts as well, but it's going to be, eventually you get to this point where it's a little bit too late.
Yep. So Kyle's going to go with that first trade, does get an Ultra Ball off of it, has the Rare Candy already in hand, so he's going to be able to put a Gardevoir GX down on the board, start Secret Springing some more energies, and really just fully establishes the dominant position that he already finds himself in.
Right.
He still has an extra trade available. He has not played a supporter, and he has not used Premonition. So there's still many options that he has available to him in order to find the Guzma, for example, like you were saying.
Right. So, and I mean, when he did use that first trade, he already knew what cards he was getting.
Yep.
So you see Kyle being extremely strategic there. He draws first the cards that he knew were on top that he wanted to put into his hand. Then he shuffles the deck before using the Gallade's ability again to be able to now see a new set of 5 cards to be able to get with the second Zoroark's trade ability. So just making it even easier for him to try to look and find that Guzma.
There it is.
Yep.
Yeah, very impressive forward thinking from Kyle here, being 2-3 turns ahead of the actual play being made right now. Guzma's going to be able to take 2 prizes with the Sensitive Blade. He develops a Gardevoir, has Secret Spring, double colorless energy as well.
I think we're going to see a concession here from Chip at any moment.
I mean, Chip still has 6 prizes left. That Sudowoodo still in the prizes as well. The Cobalion, he could maybe get that into play and could knock out the Gardevoir with the attack, but then Sensitive Blade can just respond and Kyle would win the game with a supporter.
Yeah, the way he's setting up right here, I mean, if he takes the knockout on the Gallade with the Tapu Lele, Gardevoir GX literally just needs a single energy or a choice band and it's already knocking out that Tapu Lele. So with that, I think that the damage is coming off. It looks like we are going into game 2 with Kyle Sabelhaus already up his first game here of the second day of Charlotte Pokemon Regional Championships. If there's anything that you would like, this is the best way to start out day 2. Kyle has got to be feeling good, ready and pumped to make it into this top 8 for himself.
Yeah, and Chip kind of revealing, Sudowoodo in the prizes. I had no way to really answer anything that you were doing. Kyle, yeah, it certainly has to feel good considering Chip is playing a deck that is tech to beat you. It's tech to hit you for weakness, hit you for a lot of damage. And he never did that. Like, his biggest attack was, well, I guess I'm going to energy drive for 80.
He never did more than 80 damage with one attack.
80 damage. And that deck is supposed to be doing 200, 240 damage with one attack. So Chip is going to definitely be trying to find those counter energy attackers and, actually take some knockouts in the second game.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's got to feel disappointing from his end. Just used to doing so much out of weakness and stuff. And your deck, he drew cards, he got his Zorks and everything set up, but his deck just decided it did not want to cooperate with him. He could not put the pieces together. Even outside of that Sudowoodo and everything being in his prize cards, it just things were not flowing the same way that Kyle Sabelhaus's deck was there.
Yeah, and it's really funny to say that because Chip did get 3 Zoroark GX on the board that game. He had a lot of trades available and he had a huge hand, just didn't have exactly what he needed. There was energies, I had like Sycamore and stuff, which is not exactly the right cards to put together as a combo to take over the board. And it's funny to say that can happen, but at the end of the day, this is a card game, and sometimes you just don't draw the exact cards that you need.
Right. Zoroark really helps out in making it so it's more likely to draw the card combinations and everything you need. The averages work out in your favor if you want to go into statistics and everything like that, but it's not a 100% chance. You're not always going to get the cards that you need. And I think this is actually the first mulligan that we've had on stream throughout both days, at least that I've caught. I don't think I've had any players mulligan, which is really interesting.
Yeah, Chip's going to shuffle and give Kyle an extra card here. He is going first. Now, usually when you were mulliganing, in times past, before the Tapu Lele Bridget turn 1 play was really huge, it was okay to throw away some of these mulligans and give your opponent some extra cards because, you can just play the end, shuffle them back in, and those extra cards don't actually end up mattering. But now everyone wants to play Bridget on the first turn, and that means those extra cards that you're giving your opponent, those cards are going to stick. So we got to see from Chip if he's able to get the Bridget off or if he's going to have to play end.
It almost looked like he was going to be forced to start with that Mew, but I didn't see the couple extra basics that were on one side of his hand. Now, prizes going down for both players. On Kyle's side, not really much. It's actually a really nice mixture of prize cards. Nothing in there that's anything too crucial. On Chip's side, feels kind of rough to have 2 energy cards in your prizes, but overall, definitely a lot better than we saw last game when you had your Sudowoodo and everything prized.
Yeah, that Field Blower could potentially be impactful because you really need it to flip the Parallel City to the side that you want it to be. And if you don't have access to that Field Blower, it kind of gets difficult in order to do that.
But Chip does play 3.
He does play 3 of them. Yeah, very, very scared of probably Garbotoxin. That's why you would play the 3 copies of that. But also now have full control over how the Parallel City. You don't want to have that 3 bench facing you. And on Kyle's prizes, the only thing I really see that might end up being impactful is the Enhanced Hammer in there.
Right.
Chip plays no basic energies at all, so that Enhanced Hammer can target literally any attachment that he makes. So it might come into play, but it's in a reasonable spot in Kyle's prizes to where he'll draw it throughout the mid game and be able to make an impactful play later on.
Now, as much as Kyle, Chip wants to go for that triple Zagura play, you've got to think that he's going to make a little bit of a change from his last game scenario. I'd really like to see either the Tapu Koko or just flat out benching the Sudowoodo in this kind of scenario.
Yeah.
You don't want to get stuck in that same position you did last game when you're forced to promote that Zoroark and look and dig for the float stone or anything to get you in the situation that you need to promote the attacker that you want in that area.
Yeah, this allows you to attack with things that is not right as speeding, which means Gallade is not nearly as threatening to you. The Sudowoodo, yes, it does get knocked out by Sensitive Blade, but it's only worth 1 prize. It's not worth 2. And most importantly, you won't be losing one of your outs to trade if you lose the Sudowoodo. So Chip's going to go ahead and have both of his main counter energy attackers for this matchup, the Cavalion and the Sudowoodo, goes ahead and smacks down the counter energy. So Kyle's prized Enhanced Hammer definitely going to be impactful here because that counter energy is going to stick.
Yep. It's almost as if Chip knew that Enhanced Hammer prize because he just laid that down confidently, said, you know what? I am not scared of that Enhanced Hammer whatsoever because it's kind of a risky play. If you know that your opponent has the Enhanced Hammer and everything there, if anything, you kind of bait it out, but at the same time, you don't really want to give them the value that they were looking for. And I've got to say, that's about some of the best value that you can get is to rip the counter energy right off the Sudowoodo that's just waiting for him.
Right, yeah, the counter energy also not going to be used for a couple of turns. Kyle is not going to be able to take a knockout on his first turn, which means that counter energy is not going to be active on turn 2 for Chip. So at best, he's going to be able to use it on turn 3. So he's giving Kyle a couple turns to find that enhanced hammer.
And I gotta say, I think it's pretty likely that Kyle does not attack until, actually, Kyle Sabelhaus just passed with nothing but a 0. We could see Chip literally take this game here this turn. If he has the double colorless energy and the float stone,
this is going to be the game. He's going to Ultra Ball for Lele, gets the Mallow, and there's more than enough cards there. Kyle Sabelhaus losing a quick game 2 because he had no good supporter in his opening hand, just had to play the end. And then off of his end, draws no basic. He drew a Bridget, but of course, you're not playing Bridget if you've already played end that turn. So, a very quick game 2 that Chip is able to kind of just steal right out from under Kyle's nose.
Yeah, and the only thing I guess you got to say that's, a benefit of that kind of happening is now we do have a full 28 minutes that we're going to be able to use to go into game 3. So both players are going to be able to play at a much more comfortable pace.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about these Zoroark trading card game decks, it really makes it... it's a mental relief to be able to do that because some of these plays and some of the ways that you have to set these things up, it's difficult. It's got to be a lot. You've just played 9 rounds of Pokemon the day before. If you make it to the finals, you're going to be playing 9 rounds again. The mental wear it's there. It's there on the players.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that between Mallow, Premonition, just how many sheer number of trades that you have available to you, you gotta always be deciding, what card am I gonna discard? What 2 cards do I put on top with Mallow? Which 2 of these 5 from Premonition do I need right now versus which ones do I want to draw later on? So many micro decisions that Zoroark GX actually puts forth for these players to make. So having that little bit of room to make those decisions and really think on what is the best play here, definitely is going to feel good.
Agreed. Now, going into this game 3, we're gonna, Chip's gonna be able to actually, Kyle's gonna be able to go first. That is his first, it's what he got to do on the first game as well. And we saw how well that benefited him. If he's able to go first and get a turn 2 Rare Candy Gallade, that just puts Chip in such a difficult position.
Right.
Just because one of those Zoroark GXs are going to fall to the Sensitive Blade.
Yeah, that turn 2 Gallade certainly being good strong for Kyle as Chip's going to go ahead and mulligan again. Shuffle in, draw a new set of 7, and hopefully that extra card, for Kyle's sake, gives him a better turn 1 than he'd had in game 2, because that was one of the worst turn 1s I've seen in this entire tournament, unfortunately.
Yeah, Chip actually plays 14 basic Pokemon, so he's got quite a bit. But for some reason, his deck just decided to say, we're going to make sure that we give Kyle, we're going to put the game on hard mode. We want Kyle to start with 8 cards both times. But we saw last game, Kyle started with 8 cards, and it didn't really help him.
Right, yeah. Chip really wants to start that Tapu Koko, have that free retreat option so that he can always pivot into the correct counter energy attacker that he wants. So that's certainly, of those many basics that he does play, definitely the ideal one that he wants in the starting position. But we'll see which ones he ends up drawing here. Kyle taps the deck, opts not to cut. Chip starts drawing Sudowoodo and a Zorua.
There we go. So we got the Zorua start finally. So that's got to be one of the things that Chip really kind of looks for. You don't really want to. Well, apparently he disagrees with me. He does want to start that Sudowoodo. He doesn't really like starting Zorua apparently. We see the rainbow and the double colorless prize and the Mimikyu. Chip's prizes are really deciding to make things difficult for him. He does not have a good answer to that Gallade coming out with Sensitive Blade because if Sudowoodo decides to watch and learn that, his Sensitive Blade's unfortunately not going to cut it.
Yep.
It's going to be just a little bit short.
And Kyle's turn 1 here, going to reflect exactly what happened in game 1. He starts Tapu Lele, and then he Ultra Balls for a second Tapu Lele in order to get the Bridget. I bet it's going to be 2 Zorua and a Routes, but he might be fearing the Sudowoodo start. Opt for 2 Routes instead, but I doubt it. You've got to get those trades into play. That's exactly what he goes for.
I don't think you can function in the deck without having the double Zoroark.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's a necessity to go for the 2 Zoruas and everything there, as much as you want to have that extra Welt in play. But so far, this first turn mirroring Kyle's first turn on the game 1.
Exactly.
Almost like, literally double Lele, double Zorua, the Welts and everything. Now let's see if his turn 2 can mirror it as well with that Glade.
Yeah, and we'll see how Chip's turn 1 develops. If he's got out to Bridget and can start to get some of his own Zorua down on the board, because if your opponent gets the Bridget on the first turn and you miss your turn 1 Bridget, you can fall really far behind in these Zoroark mirror matches. Chip's card off the top, double colorless, doesn't really do much for him yet. Has some options, has a Guzma and pulls that up to the front. Might not have a great hand here. Puzzle of Time, yeah, this is not strong. Ooh, he's got an Ultra Ball off those 3 though. He can move that to the top, which means his second turn is going to be a lot more live. He can play this Guzma to bring up the other Lele without an energy, and that's exactly what he does here to try and buy himself some time. Can put a Zorua down, and he's just going to pass.
And I want to point out again that high level of thinking here that you actually kind of see from Chip Richey, and these are the things that get them into that day 2 spot, the things that make a little bit of a difference in everything overall. Normally, when your opponent's going first, you've got a Zorua in your hand, you'd think, well, of course I'm going to bench it down. What if he plays an end? I don't want this, I don't want the Zorua to go away.
Right.
But recognizing he's probably going to play the Bridget, he held it because he knew he wanted to play the Guzma. He saw that his hand was not looking good and figured this is probably going to be the reality of my situation. So holding that Zorua down until after he's able to play that Guzma so he doesn't force himself to bring his Zorua and everything active.
Yeah, that's a really good play. I had not thought that through all the way. But yeah, clearly Chip demonstrating why he belongs here in the second day of contention, and hopefully his second turn will allow him to establish a board to fully, demonstrate all of his capability.
And Kyle says, you know what, I see that you're having a little bit of a slow start, so I'm going to do the opposite, and I'm going to go like a bullet train again, double Zoroark in play, and you got to think Kyle likes his hand because he just had to discard a Puzzle of Time.
Right.
There's the Floatstone that he needed, there's the double colorless energy, that aggressive play is already starting from Kyle Sabelhaus. He takes his first prize of Game 3. He is putting that clock on Chip Richey.
Yeah, now Chip's in a really tight spot here because that Ultra Ball, yeah, it could go get Bridget, and you could get some basics on the board, but then the rest of Chip's turn it doesn't do anything.
No, I think he's going to have to go for something like a Sycamore. It's an uncomfortable decision, but I also got to say, if he's really thinking about his Ultra Ball targets, we're probably more likely to actually see that or anything, or maybe a Cynthia, but...
Right, potentially N.
Yeah, he's just in a pickle. He really needs to make sure he puts his gas on in this situation.
Yeah.
And even if he gets a Zoroark here in a DC and can retaliate and do some damage on the Zoroark to set up a 2-shot, Kyle's still got his 2 Zoroark reactions on the bench. He could just get a Mallow and go Rare Candy, Gallade, Sensitive Blade.
Yeah, I don't think Chip can really afford to fall much further behind here. He might have to just go for broke, get a Sycamore out like you were saying, just draw 7 cards and try and hit the absolute nuts. Get a Floatstone, a Rescue Stretcher, and a counter energy, and just say, you know what, right is beating right back at you. But probably not going to happen here. He goes with the Ultra Ball, going to go undoubtedly get Tapu Lele, and we'll see which supporter he decides to go with. He plays 1 Sycamore and 1 Cynthia, neither of which are in the prizes, so he has his options available to him, but he's really got to think on which supporter is the correct move.
Yep. So, and if that Gallade does come up because of Mimikyu's in the prize, again, he's not really going to have a good answer to it. That Kartana GX could be something useful here just to be able to actually slow down, but Chip decides, he's like, you know what, I'm going to have to play a risky game here. Kyle's already putting the pressure down. If I Sycamore and I don't find the Pokemon that I need, I don't get additional Zoruas in play, I understand that that's going to be the game over for me.
Yeah.
So he's opting to go for that Bridget to secure his bench Pokemon, excuse me, and make sure that he gets the cards that he needs going forward.
Yep, so there's Wonder Tag for Bridget. He's got 3 Zorua pulled right now. Looks like he might just get all of them down on the board. I'm not sure what else is in his hand if he has an out to Zoroark, because he could evolve that active Zorua. That makes the Bridget a little bit more of a comfortable play, because at least you'll have a little bit of draw power on top of it. But we'll see.
Chip hoping for explosiveness.
Yeah.
I gotta say, to me, that's what he's signaling here. He says, you know what, I'm going to have to pull off some explosive moves, so I'm going to have to go for this triple Zorua, because he's hoping to go trade, find a Zoroark, trade, find another Zoroark, trade, find the 3rd Zoroark, and go from there.
Yeah.
And it's really going to be his best option, everything here to go. He does have this Rescue Stretcher, so interesting to see him not opt to go for that Sudowoodo and put it on the bench here. Again, putting him in that awkward situation where he's going to have to find the Floatstone because he doesn't have his own copy of Tapu Koko or anything on the bench.
Yeah.
Chip's got to see something quick because those two cards in his hand, neither one of them are going to get him where he needs to go.
And the Rescue Stretcher is kind of neat to hold because it could be a strange situation where Kyle goes Parallel City, he can discard the Lele, and then if Chip top decks Field Blower, he can get rid of the Parallel City. And actually, you don't even need that because Zoro's going to get knocked out. So you can just Rescue Stretcher the Lele back, and then, hey, look, I've got some more draw power. Kyle going with another Mallow play. Mallow just really showing how strong it can be. Where you basically with trade, it says, I just search for any two cards you want, and down comes Gallade.
The first premonition goes off. He's going to be able to look into the future of this next trade. And again, Chip playing to his outs. I like that comment that you mentioned about his Parallel City. You gotta think that Kyle is literally thinking in his head, all right, I need to lock Chip down, and what's the first card he's gonna look for? He's going to look for Parallel City in that scenario. So he doesn't end up going for it just yet, so he doesn't get to use this, but Chip says, I've got a double colorless energy in my hand.
His top deck was Tapu Lele, I think.
Oh, ow, that's actually really good. That's really, really good.
I think that's what it was. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it looked like it was Tapu Lele, which makes Chip's turn a lot more interesting than Energy Drive for 80. So he looks at his discard pile, and there it is, Tapu Lele's Wonder Tag, saving Chip in this situation. Maybe he won't be hemorrhaging many more prizes before he can start to make something happen, because Professor Sycamore, after the Rescue Stretcher, can pull up the Sudowoodo or a Zorua.
I think we're actually going to see both the Sudowoodo and the Zorua go into the deck here right before the Sycamore, so that way he has access to both. He doesn't really need the Sudowoodo just yet because he's going to be energy driving and everything this turn. This was not too little too late for Chip. This was the turn that he needed. He had to get that Sycamore off the top.
Yes.
He found it, but now he's back in the game. He's using Tapu Lele as the attacker here, which I like because Kyle does not have a Ralts on the bench, which means Gardevoir GX is not coming out, and Gardevoir is really the only way that Kyle can immediately deal with a Tapu Lele in one hit. So Chip recognizing that situation, and here we actually also see that Kartana coming in. We might see it come down here.
Yeah, I mean, your Energy Drive ends up doing less damage if you remove that double colorless, but that means there's a little bit less pressure coming from Kyle's side. So we'll see if Chip decides to dedicate his final bench spot to Kartana GX as he trades away into two new cards, has a Zoroark on the board, so that is certainly something in his favor. The rest of the cards in his hand, though, doesn't look like it's doing much for him as he signals Energy Drive, 80 damage.
Right. But I will say this, it looks like he's kind of holding on to some good stuff there because he's got the Float Stone, he's got the one Zoroark and everything in play. So the next turn, again, you need to start seeing some of the cards you want off of these trades, but he's got the starting foundation of what can be some really good turns. Of course, Kyle already has his board pretty much set up. The only thing he would want is either another Zorua or a Ralts at this point. But things are starting to look pretty good for Kyle, but Chip is still hanging in there. He's got those counter energy attackers, which can be the things that he needs. This is kind of almost how Chip wants to play. He wants to play from behind to be able to use his counter energy attackers. And again, Kyle recognizing that fact by only setting up things like that Gallade and setting up even a Tapu Lele, which is so out of the ordinary because Tapu Lele is really the only Pokemon that Chip can't just immediately deal with. The only thing that he could do is if Kyle goes up 4 prizes, he could take it out actually with a Cobalion and a Choice Band, so...
Wow, this is a really strong turn coming out of... Oh, he's got another Ralts as well, and an enhanced...
Okay.
Kyle blowing up Chip's entire board here with the Parallel City, Sensitive Blade from Guzma, Enhanced Hammer. Chip just went from, he might be in this game to, wait, I'm down 6 prizes to 2, and my board is 2 Zorua.
And a Tapu Lele. And a Parallel City in board. Like that, that was everything. That was a lot to process. If Kyle knew what he was going to be doing because he had the premonition, so he saw everything there. But he did everything he possibly could of that turn to make things difficult for Chip.
Chip now has to go with that slice off. He has to start removing some of the pressure that Kyle is applying. And Energy Drive is going to be another just 80 damage. Chip hasn't attacked for more than 80 damage still this series.
No, this entire series, he does not do more than 80. It's actually, every attack he's done has been exactly 80 damage in this series so far. The end does come down to put Kyle down to 2. Of course, he's got his Zorks and his Gallade, and this is that situation that if he had had access to that Mimikyu, it would have made his situation so much better. He had the Float Stone, he had the counter energy, he traded away an Ultra Ball last turn. He could have set up that return knockout here on the Gallade, but there is nothing he can do to take this out in one hit, so he's going to have to use the Tapu Lele to soften this up in this area.
Right, and of course right now Chip does not have Zoroark in play, so that Gallade is not in a position currently to take 2 prizes with another Guzma, and you can only imagine that Kyle, between Premonition and Double Trade, is going to be able to find that Guzma, and now the Evo Soda will put the Zoroark GX down, which means Kyle wins the game with just Guzma.
Evo Soda at least coming out though with the GX, so that's going to help him at least with the setup. But like you said, Guzma literally will win him the game. I mean, you see Chip's head whirring. You know, you wonder, do I wait to put the Zoroark out until I knock out the Gallade? Do I want to go for the safe route?
Yeah, he's counting the Guzmas.
Difficult.
Counting the Guzmas that Kyle has available to him right now. Looking through the discard pile, and guess what? There are not many in there, if at all. So.
There's one, and that means it's like the worst scenario that you could have, because you have the one in there, which means both Puzzle of Time and drawing the physical Guzma.
Maximum odds.
Yeah, you can't use the Tapu Lele to grab it because his bench is full. I mean, he could just pull off some crazy scenario where he field blower, puts a Parallel City down, field blowers at himself, frees up a bench space. But I don't really know that we're going to go that far. But overall, Chip saying, I can't Evo Soda here. Yeah, I can't do it.
Just decides after playing the Evo Soda, I can't put Zoroark down on the board. Otherwise, I might just lose the following turn. And another 80 damage attack coming from Chip. Kyle draws his card. See if Berry Energy, I think maybe Float Stone or Field Blower. Okay, trades Field Blower. It's a second Field Blower. There's a Puzzle of Time. Now he can do the Premonition. Look at the top 5. If there's another puzzle or a Guzma in those top 5, Kyle can win. No, he doesn't win the game. I'm sorry. There's no Zoroark on the board. But
if he finds a Gardevoir or an Ultra Ball in the top, he has a rare candy in his hand and a Fairy Energy. He can just start this crazy train.
Yeah.
I mean, Kyle is saying the same thing. He's showing the same signals that he did first game. He said, all right, I've got the Gallade. I'm going to pressure you, force you to deal with it. But at the same time, I'm going to build up a Gardevoir on my bench. Yeah, you've got a Kamalian out, but I need to take 2 prizes. That's it. I don't need to take 4. I need to take 2. So as soon as I can find a way to muster through and take a knockout on this Tapu Lele or the Karton on the bench or the Zoroark when it comes out, this is going to be over.
Yeah, so the second trade now after the Premonition. There's an Evo Soda and a Bridget. The Evo Soda, Kyle does not play any Kirlia, so this is just to thin the Evo Soda out of the deck. Look at what's still available and shuffle the deck, because maybe he just doesn't like the other cards that he saw on the Premonition. So Kyle just resetting his deck for the next turn.
Again, really, really smooth there. He does not care about the other cards necessarily in there.
All right, so we're going to shuffle. The Sensitive Blade will be setting up the Lele for a 2-shot here. Actually, no, he can also just retreat and go with his own Energy Drive and say, hey, that was a really cool 80 damage attack you did. I'm going to do that myself.
The 80s are coming across the board. I think we're just going to set all the dices to 6 and 2 for the rest of the tournament.
Yeah, Energy Drive, 80 damage, back over to Chip, and that Tapu Lele is so difficult for him to knock out because he just can't hit it for weakness. The Revenge Blast with a Choice Band from the Kabalion would be 180 damage. That's really Chip's only option here. But of course, if he goes with that move now, he will not have a great answer to the Gardevoir later. He'd have to find double Puzzle of Time to pull the Kabalion and the Counter Energy back out in order to do it again.
But this is where it all starts for Chip. If he's going to make a comeback, we're going to see this process start here with probably that Counter Energy and Choice Band play first. He can't go for the Mallow here because he doesn't have the Zoroark to be able to set everything up.
Right.
And Kyle, recognizing that Chip was afraid of that Gallade last turn by not getting out the Zoroark, this is where he says, all right, fine. So I see that you're not getting out the Zoroark until you take out my Gallade. Well, I'm going to move the Gallade so that you don't really have an answer to it. And then the worst part is that Chip doesn't even have a knockout on this Gallade anymore because the 2 energy are gone from it.
Yep.
If Tapu Lele hits it, it doesn't do 80 anymore. It's only 40.
It's only 40.
So that's just not going to be enough to actually take out that Gallade. So
yeah, so you can't even get Guzma here in order to remove that. Of course, Chip also probably not very interested at this point in only taking 1 prize. He needs to start taking 3 prize knockouts. So he plays the Field Blower, removes his Float Stone, trying to thin out as many cards as possible. Does not want to see that Field Blower off of this Cynthia draw for 6. Needs to find some very good cards here. And Field Blower, not one of them right now.
I mean, this is a scenario where as Chip, you want to find that counter energy, the choice band, and I don't know if you really want to find a Zoroark or not. If he does find it, I don't know if he's going to put it in play.
I mean, I think you have to if you don't have the counter energy choice band move here, because otherwise
Agreed.
You're just, again, energy driving for 80.
No, and if you energy drive for 80 here, you're probably just going to get knocked out. So, I mean, besides the Field Blower thinning out the deck, I love that play from Chip because he's taking literally one out of Kyle's book there from what he did last turn.
Yeah.
He sees that the primary attackers that Kyle has now are going to be these things like Tapu Lele, and the Raltza has an energy on it. So if Chip removes the double colorless from his Tapu Lele, it's going to make it much more difficult for a Guzma to come down on Kyle's side. Chip is doing what I like to call playing to your outs. You know that you're in a very, very rough situation, and there is a very, very limited window, and it's so far-fetched for you to be able to take the victory, but you know that that is your only realistic path.
Yep.
So you have to do it no matter how far-fetched it seems, including not getting out of Zoroark GX on the previous turn. You've got to do what you have to do to make sure that you're still in the game and that you haven't lost just yet.
Yeah, in Chip's hand right now, he's got the counter energy, but there is no choice band, so he has to go for the trade in order to get to the choice band. Does get another Ultra Ball, so he can try again with a second Zoroark, but he's running thin on cards in his hand.
Yeah, I think he has 4 in hand, so I actually don't think he can do it, because if he Ultra Balls 3 of them, he would have to discard the counter energy right afterwards.
Yeah.
So he can't do it, so he's going to go for another
80 damage, energy drive for 80. We're running out of dice with 6 and 2 on the pips. We'll see Kyle's top deck, Zoroark GX, not a playable card for him. Has plenty of outs to knock out that Tapu Lele this turn. First trade does not get him to Guzma, but the Premonition gonna dig 5 deep. Puzzle or Guzma wins Kyle the game here.
And again, some great plays. There it is. Guzma right on top. There's going to be the trade. That's going to be it. But that great level of thinking from Kyle, playing his first trade first, because he wants to be able to premonition into 7 cards instead of 5.
Right.
It lets him look a little bit deeper for that puzzle time in Guzma. But Kyle Sabelhaus advancing to 1-0 on his second day of the Charlotte Regional Championships. No better way to feel. He's got to feel confident. He's gunning for that top 8 spot. It's been a little while for him, but he is no stranger here. Chip Richey cannot feel that great about this game, but he is not out either. I can tell you both players are still ones that we are very likely to continue to see throughout this day.
Yeah, absolutely. The counter energy deck, very, very strong, even when falling behind. Just wasn't able to put the cards together this game, but there's a reason he's 7-1-1 right now, and here in day 2 is oftentimes you'll draw the counter energies and just start to run through your opponent once they get ahead to a fast start.
Right.
Really, really good against decks that don't have a lot of draw power as well. If they're not playing Octillery or Zoroark, then especially when they get ahead, you can play end them down to a low hand size, and then start smacking with counter energy attackers. And if they can't draw out of that end, that's where a lot of Chip's wins, I can only imagine, have come forth in the first day of the tournament.
Absolutely. And with that, guys, something I do want to mention, I know we have some time and everything between rounds, so do make sure to check out. We have a lot of BGC action coming in here. They are actually down to their top 8, top 4 in finals match for the day. They don't have any more Swiss rounds. We're streaming a couple different divisions there. We will be posting the link in chat, so that way you have access to be able to get to it there. So please make sure you tune in, and we'll keep you guys updated on when the next TCG round and everything should be starting. I'd say hopefully in the next 20 minutes or so. And throughout the day, once we get past a couple of these next rounds, you could also expect a couple of interviews from some of these players as well. Once we get a little bit less BGC time. But make sure to tune in, guys. We will be back shortly with round 2 of the Charlotte Regional Championships.